All right, welcome to this special edition of Redspin Sports. We're going to be talking a little college football with a couple friends of mine from the past, but from high school football and college, Florida State with Rod Owens there, and who's been officially yelled at by Tom Brady a few times, right? and JR, John Russell, who, correct me if I'm wrong, had a locker next to Marshawn Lynch for about 2 weeks.
Me and Marshawn got pretty close there for a few weeks. NFL, man, it's trade city. So Marshawn was off to Seattle there not too long after I arrived.
Yeah, maybe just since I brought that up real quick, you could say, I remember in Buffalo, I'd always heard that like early on, he would talk to the media a lot, right? And then a lot of people misunderstood that when he stopped talking to the media, that was only after he had that situation where he felt like reporters had basically just not been real with him. And they basically were just kind of like interviewing him to make fun of him when they thought just the way he sounded and stuff was just sort of, meant he was dumb or something like that. And that was sort of led to a lot of his mistrust of the media you saw there. And what was that, Super Bowl 48, where he was just like, no comment. What did he say? You can find me or whatever?
I'm just here so I don't have to be fined.
I'm just here
so I won't get fined. Yeah. Yeah. No, dude's a sharp cat for sure. Like, that's the thing about him. He knew what was going on. Like, don't get it twisted, man. He might have been from Oakland, but the short time that I knew him, he had his head on his shoulders. He knew.
Anyways, I wanted to kind of, get this going and do an episode tonight based on, we had the recent passing of Coach Bobby Bowden. We've had a Supreme Court decision this summer with name, image, and likeness. And there's just so many different things that have really, been earth-shattering in terms of life in general, but especially this idea of amateurism and how that's been challenged. And, a lot of people found it kind of ironic that Brett Kavanaugh's opinion was one of the most, strident in its calling out of the NCAA. So we're waiting for Rod, JR. Maybe before we get into like the other stuff, we're going to talk about some games and kind of go down memory lane a little bit before we preview stuff. Kind of, what was your take on the whole Supreme Court decision and kind of how it's changed the landscape and just amateurism in general and just the state of the NCAA?
Yeah, no, I think I think the Supreme Court made a good call. I think there's nothing, less quote unquote un-American than being able to monetize yourself and your abilities and your skills at any juncture in life. I mean, you have kids that come up with inventions and they're able to put it online and then sell it and do whatever. And when you have a skill and when you're a top tier college athlete, going from high school into the universities, I mean, it's the only skill, it's the only ability in this country that you're only allowed to monetize at a certain junction. Like, they really hold your hands and you can't do anything about it. And you're just more or less, not to use slavery lightly, but you're kind of a slave to the system, right? Yeah. Like, you have to play by their rules and do what they say. I think it was a long time coming. It should have happened earlier. I think there's a part of me that kind of is concerned about where being somewhat of a traditionalist and kind of liking the conference layout and all that kind of stuff. It's definitely going to change some of that, but I think ultimately it will be for the better. And I think everybody that has some value is going to find a home. Even small schools like Wake Forest, like, there's going to be guys that are going to want to go there and they're going to be able to use NIL to make some money. It's going to be different at a place like Florida State, at Texas, at Oklahoma, Southern Cal, Alabama. Yeah, they're going to command more money, but at the same time, some of these other places are going to do just fine. These kids are going to get, rewarded for what they do.
But JR, me as a fan, the only reason I like college football is to watch these guys who don't get paid.
Right.
I'm not even joking. That actually was like the NCAA's case. The only thing that makes our sport great is people love watching people not get paid for their work.
Right. I mean, it's really, I mean, it's very much a mob mentality and a mafia mentality with the NCAA. Like, they're out for theirs, and they've made billions and tens of billions over the course of decades off the backs of these guys. And, whatever background they come from, it doesn't really matter. It's just they're in there putting in the work. They have the skills. They have the assets. And look, a lot of these guys are going to get educations one way or another. And that was kind of always the thing. Well, we're giving them a college education. It's like, well, not really. The boosters and the universities are. The
it's not like
NCAA
they're
is
being given it. They're putting in
right.
the work for that, right?
They're
I mean,
right. It's this idea of tit for tat, and it's like it's not really tit for tat. I mean, you come to university, we offer an education to you, yeah, and that's great. But at the same time, like you're making tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars per athlete in this
Power 5 level, yeah.
in high, yeah, especially Power 5, yeah. I mean, especially places like like you got like Florida State, these guys have money.
Right.
Like,
the thing that gets me here's Rod. We got 2 Rod Owenses coming in here, but we'll try to work with one of these anyways. But it gets me how there's you look back over the years and all the ridiculous things that ended up costing people their whole eligibility, right? That ended up just leading to massive scandals. And you can't
Reggie Bush.
For all Reggie Bush. I mean, the least they can do is give the man his damn Heisman back, right? I mean, that should be a damn demand that people should all rally behind, but we shall see. I mean, the other thing too is, I wish that, especially when you get to like the level of these super conferences, that there could be some, leveraging of player demands to make it so that there's a fund for healthcare expenses, at least for guys who have, I might just toot my own horn, but like when you have, just people that have chronic issues and injuries and
from exactly, I agree.
So that stuff can play a role too. But yeah, Rod, can you hear me all right now? You good?
Yes. Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. Welcome, man. Welcome. So yeah, so we were just talking about some of this name, image, and likeness stuff. We saw what was the dude's name? Named Kool-Aid at Alabama this last week. Get his Kool-Aid deal. So this stuff's only getting started right now, and we'll see. It's definitely going to change the landscape, and it's just sort of wild when you really break it down. How when you see how someone like Brett Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court, I think someone like him realized basically that this train was, there was too much media attention and scrutiny that essentially, not going along with changing it was going to lead to the contradictions exploding. I mean, I looked back and did some research. And it was like 1984, basically, the last time the Supreme Court ruled on anything about college football. And they basically said that they couldn't have a monopoly, NCAA could not have a monopoly over TV deals. And that's what led to the huge money coming into the game in a way that basically got us to this point today, leading to every conference having their own contracts and the money continue to grow. It used to be the NCAA actually had it where you could only show 1 or 2 games a week, and they had just a straight monopoly on that, and just insane to think about that now. But anyways, Rod, let me just ask you a little fun question at first, man. If this name, image, and likeness stuff would have been legal when you were coming out of Wilson High School in 2005, what brand would you like to have been sponsored by?
Well, coming out, it was always Nike.
Just get you a Nike deal coming right out.
Yeah, Nike, and of course, Jordan is an extension of Nike. So that's what I saw coming up. So that's what we normally played in was Nikes, and then definitely Nike, because I'm thinking about like Adidas, because that would be the second. It would definitely be Nike or Adidas.
Yeah. Adidas has been making it. I was always shocked when Miami ended up going Adidas in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Just didn't look at it first. I'm just so used to seeing Miami with the Nikes and stuff. But stuff changes. But anyways, let's just get into a little stuff. I mean, Coach Bowden recently passed away, and I know that coming out of high school. I mean, I know JR, your parents were huge fans of his, and you ended up going to Wake Forest. And for those of you who don't know, when John was at Wake, from 05 to 09 or 06 to 09 playing. They beat FSU 3 years in a row, 3 out of 4 for him. And that was the kind of time, though, when Coach Bowden's time was coming down. But Rod was also there at that point, and there were issues going on. Like, Jeff Bowden was a great, like you said, receivers coach and really, worked great with the fundamentals. But obviously things kind of, just weren't working out with the FSU fans, especially. Let's be real. After that game, what was it? The 30-0 loss to Wake, I think, was actually.
Oh yeah, it was a rainy day.
That essentially was pretty much the end. That's when I think FSU, the administration went to Bobby and was like, "Yeah, man, you're going to have to make a change," and that kind of ultimately led to Jimbo coming in. But I don't know, maybe both of you, man, could go around just sort of what your just what our memories of Coach Bowden were, and then we'll just kind of take it from there.
Well, for me, my memories of Coach Bowden, man, he was always a class act. Like anytime, like people, when I used to get asked a random question like, "How is Coach Bowden?" and I always used to respond like, "I never met." He was like the only person that always said the right thing 100% of the time, and it was just genuine. It was authentic, and everything was always faith based. Whenever I like reflect and I think about just like all like his words. It was very little football. Of course, football during football season and like halftime and pregame, but it was more so about like, how's your walk with the Lord? What do you like? Your actions in line with getting you to the kingdom? So just carrying yourself that way, and like he was a true believer and a true teacher, and he was really big on planting those seeds, man. And I don't know, just all this stories was super funny too, man. It's just like super simple stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, maybe you could talk about like, you always hear about how like Coach Bowden gets the chance to get in someone's living room that they've offered, that he just wanted his assistants basically to get into a chance to tee him up so that he could go in and close the deal. You have any memories of when he came in and met your family in Jacksonville?
Yeah, man, he came in, and I remember Coach Odell was with him. Coach Lilly was with him as well. And came into the house, and immediately we didn't even stop in the living room. We actually went straight through and went to my backyard where my buddies were playing. Everybody came, stopped and gathered around, and he shook everybody's hand. And like I told them of course they knew who he was, but I like formally introduced him. And I thought that was the coolest thing, man, because like for me, it's not really about me. Like I'm an introvert too, so anytime I can get the attention away from me, that was always good, So. And just being able to sit back and watch him, I'm like, man, he's just a real stand-up guy, and just how he interacted with my family. And I didn't really know what I knew, like during the actual recruiting visit, but he was just like down to earth, just talking about just good old times and what my plans were, what my mom had in store for me, or what she thought. Of course, I had the ultimate decision. And then, like the biggest part was like he never gave me any promises, man. It's all about competition. Like we're gonna give you opportunity, and opportunity is all you can ask for, So I really appreciate him not leading my family on, and just giving me an opportunity and let the cards fall what it may.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All's consistent from what you hear from everybody with Coach Bowden there for sure. Jr., I know you went to Wake Forest, which ever since '92 has been in the FSU joined the ACC, and that's been really at the time you were there. I think it's just interesting because Wake, what is it, like the smallest enrollment, right, out of all major Division I schools in the Power Five? I'm not sure. I think that's still the case.
That's still the case.
Yeah. But maybe just like, I don't know if you have any memories of ever running into Coach Bowden, or just things even during the game preparing to play Florida State. Anything that comes to mind just about that.
So when I grew up, my dad being a football coach, Coach Bowden's name and Florida State in general carried a lot of weight with my family. So being in Gainesville as a young guy, my parents, because of how much they liked and respected Coach Bowden, Dad was a Tennessee GA and had been at Valdosta State, but just by virtue of who he was and what he had done at FSU and the kind of man he was, they were always pulling for Florida State. So my family really, really loved Coach Bowden. There was Bobby Bowden books. I got a Bobby Bowden autograph my dad got me when I was it's sitting up here on the wall when I was 7 years old. So it's kind of funny to see, get out there and play and go to Wake, and then you're playing against an icon in Bobby Bowden, because that's what he is. I mean, Florida State's, especially in the '90s, was a dynasty, and in the '80s too for a large portion of it. I mean, and it doesn't even get anywhere near that without Bobby Bowden. He built that from the ground up, and I don't think there's 5 people on this earth that can say they did it the way he did it. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, I know one thing that struck me is how you should always hear from people about how he's a lot funnier than people think. Like he's like, people think because he's so religious, right? And he's like, must be so serious all the time. But he was he was always known. Rod, you probably heard this too about driving really fast, like scooting around.
Oh, you already know it.
Maybe maybe talk about you ever run into Coach Bowden, almost run over a pedestrian or something.
Yeah, don't park by him. Don't park by him at the stadium, man. That's all. That was the word around town. Don't park by him at the stadium.
Yeah,
if he hits your car, that's on you.
You're right. Yeah. Don't come near that little halo, right?
Yeah.
His Lord. But anyways, let's real quick just getting into like some of the I guess Wake Forest, Florida State games. I mean, JR, what are some of the biggest? I mean, you and Rod came out the same year, and basically, JR, what would you say kind of about the Florida? Because Florida State, it's like with Rod being there, they still had all the athletes. I think sometimes that you all were slighted a little bit because people just characterized it like Florida State was just down, so that's the only reason
right.
Wake Forest, as opposed to like, that y'all had built up a pretty solid team, and you can look at the guys that ended up playing in the NFL, right?
Yeah, I think when looking back at Florida State at that time, and Rod knows better than me, but as just like an opponent, like, and people say, oh, Florida State's only winning 8 games, because the expectation is 10, 11 national title,
Right.
I'm just like, dude, I hear you, but they still got guys. Like, that was always my thing, is like, I could sense maybe like there was, some program shuffling going on, obviously Coach Bowden and the Coach Fisher and just the changes going on. Right. You could kind of sense that, but athletically and ability wise, there was always dudes. Like, there was always cats for sure.
I mean, like Lawrence Timmons, for instance. I mean, dude was.
Lawrence Timmons was a freak. Dude, yeah. Like, Anton Smith was a really, really nice back. There were some really great players. Rod himself, Rod was a great wide receiver.
Yeah.
They always had cats. And so, everybody always talks about the 30-0 game. And, I think that it was just kind of one of those things. It was our night. And frankly, it was our year as a squad. And we had some good guys on defense. Michigan's current offensive coordinator, Josh Gaddis, was our safety. So we had guys that knew football. Aaron Curry, we had guys that could play football. Alfonso Smith, Chip Vaughn. We had some really nice pieces on defense. Jeremy Thompson at defensive end, who probably would have played a long time, but his second year in the NFL, he had a spinal contusion. Now he's an orthopedic surgeon. So, you have all these guys that are good players, probably a little bit overlooked. I think Wake at the time got kind of hot with finding a few guys that flew under the radar.
Like Aaron comes to mind, right? Yeah.
Right, exactly. There were a few cats, and then there were a few we beat some people out on. Like, at the time, Pittsburgh was recruiting into Florida really heavily, and Alfonso Smith came to Wake over Pitt, and there were a little bit of recruiting battles, but we kind of had a few cats that probably should have had some of those bigger name offers on the table. But for whatever reason, maybe they were not quite the right build, not quite tall enough, or whatever that certain coaches look at. They just get passed over. So, I think Boo Robinson, for instance, was a guy on our defensive line with me, and LSU straight up told him, "Hey, buddy, you're just an inch too short." Right. So, So when we played Florida State, I felt like we did have some guys, but Florida State always had cats, always, like, no doubt.
Yeah, so let's go around the horn here. I got my brother, Jonathan Wallace, just joined, who played at FSU from 2009 to 2013. Unfortunately for me, I was there for the 2008, had a career and an injury, and that was game over for me. But anyways, I wanted to just kind of real quick to set that up and sort of a transition a little bit. Rod was like, 2009, you and Jonathan were teammates together. Yeah. And that was actually the last year of Coach Bowden. And that was like a big, transition year. And I don't know, maybe you could speak to it. I think a lot of people in the media played up this whole idea that like there was tension between like Jimbo and Bobby without realizing how close they were, right? going back. They had a whole relationship just because he was coaching waiting or whatever. But what was that last season with? Maybe talk about I think your best game was North Carolina, right? That almost had 200 yards there.
Yeah, that was my best game. But I don't think it was the tension between Coach Bowden and Coach Fisher. I know it was tension because you had, whenever you looked at it, it was Coach Bowden, you had Jimbo Fisher, and you also had Chuck Amato. So whenever you look at that, that's 3 head coaches under one roof. So whenever you think about that, whenever you think about a head coach, you think about leadership. And in leadership, you want to implement your ways, your winning ways. So however that looks for each coach was something that they all implemented, and I think it was just a little bit of tension of who would back down.
Yeah.
So,
I don't think. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
I don't think it was tension within the team or the coaches. I think the tension was like with the administration and the boosters, with the boosters trying to, force Bobby out and kind of take the next step of the program. But within the building, I think it was business as usual, like Rod said.
Yeah,
I don't think there was any issue.
No, you're right. It was sort of like when you have too many cooks in the kitchen, though. Sometimes, I mean, like Chuck Amato was used to being a head coach and used to being in charge, and kind of, what was his role? Executive head coach or something.
Yeah. He got his power trip after off of treating walk-ons like shit.
Made him feel good, right?
Yeah, it made him feel really good. Yeah.
His motto was, "I love to see young men run."
Yeah.
I'll never forget, after practice one day, I was there in 08, and everybody was talking about everybody needs to go get your suit, for traveling to away games. And someone was like, I forget who it was, someone yelled out "Oh, Coach Chuck, where do you get your suits?" And he's like, "From a fine tailor in Italy, the best of the best." I was like, "Oh my gosh, man."
Chuck Amato's suit budget was the same as JR's salary at Charlotte.
There you go. Yeah, that's right.
It probably was.
49er assistant coach there, John Russell.
After
a year, studying up under the Duke Blue Devil regime of David Cutcliffe. But so that year was fascinating. It ended up leading to, but real quick before we get to that, I wanted to make sure to hit on it. What would you say the biggest differences were between having Jeff Bowden your first couple of years, Rod, and then having Jimbo come in terms of how they approach running the offense? Not to say good things about one and bad about the other, but just differences in general.
Me personally, both coaches were really good. Jeff Bowden taught me a lot in my actual position, but I think when Coach Fisher came in, he did a really good job of explaining the why, explaining the reason for everything and why everything needs to be a certain way. And he just said it in a way where I understood. And Coach Bowden, he was really good. He was more so about just want to, and more so about effort versus really talking about the X's and O's and how everything works, how all the pieces work together, So both coaches were really good. I just think just the way Coach Fisher explained it, I just understood it a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, Jonathan, maybe you can speak to that, because the detail-oriented nature of Coach Fisher kind of is what, I mean, at least for me, I mean, it's hard not to draw a straight line between the way that structure, the way what he learned from Coach Saban to that national championship y'all ended up winning your last year. I don't know what your thoughts are.
I mean, that's not surprising. I mean, I never saw
Jeff Bowden
coach, but definitely spot on about Jimbo.
Well, I wanted to just circle back and just college bowl games are a big deal in college football. And, we know that with this new era, it seems to me one of the things that I kind of don't like about all the changes and stuff are that so many of the people that keep talking in at least mainstream media, it's all about everything's so centered on the playoff, which is all right. But they almost don't forget that you actually do have to go to school. There are winter sports seasons, right? There's a whole process of getting ready for the NFL draft. Let's have a 12-team playoff, maybe a 24-team. Don't you just go out there and play year round, And
it's the cash cow.
Yeah, and it's bowl games actually before they just devalued them into kind of what they are now. Actually kind of had.
Well, Nate, what I really love is because, dude, you know me, and I'm a football junkie, dude. I will watch some Pac-12 After Dark. I will watch like Tuesday Night Mac. If Akron is playing like Ohio Bobcats, like your boy's watching it, and I love watching that game. And then while the game's being played, a college football playoff bracket comes on my screen. And I just see, well, if so-and-so beats so-and-so, and then this happens, what do you think's going to, with the ACC, and then the SEC is going to have two teams? I mean, it's just nonsensical, man. Like, it's all over the place. Like, I get it. Like, Clemson's probably going to be in it this year. Alabama's going to be in it this year. Ohio State or Oklahoma is going to be in it this year. Like, we get that, dude. Like, it is what it is right now. 12 teams isn't going to make it better. It's going to just bring more money in. But it's just like it devalues like the game I'm sitting there watching in front of me. And like maybe I'm like 1% because I'll watch anything as long as it's like football and as long as it's not total trash. But it is, man. It's annoying that it's all they talk about. It's all they talk about.
It's too many college teams to have such a small playoff too. Like whenever you look at the NCAA March Madness, at least they have somewhat of a form or like a strategy to get everybody involved. But with football, there's so much wear and tear that you can't add on additional games. So like if you were to make the playoffs bigger, like when would you start that to give everybody a equal opportunity? Because of course you have the power conferences that just they're going to be in the playoffs each time. So what about those little schools that can actually make a run for it? So it's balanced, and it's just hard to figure out like what's the right way of doing that.
Yeah, Jonathan, what
it's really just a shame that like because people in the media are taking this pro mentality trying to apply it to college that it used to, winning the Outback Bowl or winning the Peach Bowl, like it should be like looked at as that's a great season for if an NC State or Wake Forest wins one of those bowls, they beat a Big Ten team or Pac-12 team, but just like it's become so much like NFL where it's just like you just if you don't make the playoff you just whatever, and it's just I don't think we're ever going back. It's just an unfortunate reality, but.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't understand too that the bowl games, like if you're going in a playoff format, like you're having to just focus on getting ready the next week. But like with the bowl games, it would be like a reward for a really tough season where you put your body through a lot, and for coaches and families, and like it was like a vacation too. It was a reward, and I don't think many people really fully understand that. But and I don't know. So just real quick before we move off this topic, JR, what about you? I mean, what are some of your best bowl game memories? I mean, out of the ones you went to, the Orange Bowl obviously comes to mind.
Yeah, Orange Bowl was obviously great. It was a great week, and wish we would have had a little bit more juice on defense to kind of slow down Louisville. But that was a good Louisville team. But Orange Bowl was first class, treated us really well. I was really, which is now, I don't know where it's gone now. It's like the Duke's Mayo Bowl, but it was like the car care, the one in Charlotte. That was good. Yeah. And
car care, baby.
Yeah. And we played in the Armed Forces Bowl one year, and that was good as well. So
in the pristine RFK Stadium, right?
In pristine, yeah. Oh, it was a dump. It was a dump. But I will say it was really true. Like what one of our coaches said is like, they're really, obviously if you want to get into one of the big New Year's Day type bowls, like that's what you want to get into, right? But or you want to get into the Peach Bowl or the Gator Bowl. But I mean, I've kind of done both, and really there's not a bad one. Like the Orange Bowl is pretty awesome, right? But like the Armed Forces Bowl, like they treat you good. You spend like a week in DC, you get, a lot of good food, great hotel, get some practices in. Like it's not a bad deal. So they're all pretty good in my mind.
Yeah, Jonathan, I know you got limited time, so maybe hop in. I mean, you actually had the experience of interning at the Gator Bowl in our hometown of Jacksonville for a while. But just kind of ranking the bowl games, I guess it would have been Gator Bowl, Peach Bowl, what was it now, Champ Sports or whatever it's called, and then Orange, and then National Championship.
Yeah, they're all. I agree. Like, I mean, they do a great job. That's what people don't. I mean, there's no way fans on the outside, unless you're like close to the program, can understand like how much like it does mean to the players, and like how much fun that week is. It's just such a unique experience. So I'm all for it. I'm also big anti the too many bowls thing, because my whole take is just don't watch the games. Like,
right.
Who cares?
Why would you be mad that someone else has
Probably
an
are too many
opportunity to
bowls,
play,
but
right?
like no one's making you watch. This 37th new bowl game they came out with.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point.
The heads or tail bowl.
Yeah.
It's coming.
It's going to be played on a small island.
I don't want to put anyone on blast, but I did hear some pretty good stories about that Emerald Bowl trip to San Francisco. Y'all went on in 2006, man. Especially because I don't know.
Music City Bowl too. If Robin's playing that,
actually, Jonathan, that's something I did want to ask you about, because that was a crazy season, and honestly, and a big reason how I ended up actually at FSU the next year, because like that cheating scandal that happened, and then the I knew James Coleman and Kes McCorvey and was working out with them, and there's this opportunity because there were all the suspensions and everything. But y'all went to a bowl game basically, and we're playing like. I mean, you had like walk-ons in the 2 deep, basically, in a way that never hardly happens. What was that game against Kentucky like?
I was there. That might have been my chance.
Yeah, that game was just give it all you had. You already know, and it's all about chemistry too. Like whenever you have new parts coming in and play, of course you have a limited amount of time to practice. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah,
and because we didn't have an answer for little.
Yeah, they had Randall Cobb too, right? I think back in Kentucky, but if I'm not mistaken. But
man, their O line was really good. I actually went back and rewatched that game, and man, their O line was just like we didn't have a good push at all. That like they controlled the trenches.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember that there were a lot of guys missing on.
You got to play.
Huh?
I don't know.
Oh yeah, I got to play, man.
And the game,
I did all my work.
You got to. I don't know if you remember Jonathan, but his Rod's like I don't know. Do you have any game? He'll forever be in the record books at Florida State with tied with Snoop Menace for the longest touchdown catch in Florida State football history.
Ponder gets protection, takes a shot down the field, and has a man wide open. Rod Owens still on his feet. End zone ahead, touchdown, 98 yards.
Now that's how you stay on the same page.
Touchdowns can't get much longer than that. And a defense that's given up very few big plays gives up a huge one there.
You know what? We'll start with the protection in the pocket. Ponder stands there. Defensive back slips, goes down, and follow through on the execution.
It was a double move, a curl and go, just enough to stymie Charles Brown. He lost his balance. Great job keeping the balance by Rod Owens. I can't remember the last time I've seen a 98-yard touchdown pass. It might have been when Chris Wenke hit Snoop Menace back against Clemson in the late 90s. Look at TJ Yates.
Okay, so what does a turnover do?
But maybe talk a little bit about that North Carolina game. It seemed like if you watched that in 2009, just think about it. If you would have lost that game, there never would have been that whole send-off in Jacksonville with Bobby Bowden, because would have had a losing record. But that was a huge comeback. And then, so, I mean, maybe just any memories that stick out for just a brief feeling any particular. Did you have any inkling that, like, that Christian was going to be throwing to you a lot that night, or just sort of the way the game kind of progressed?
No, it was actually crazy because you know how the scouts come like the beginning of the week and they kind of look at you, and one of the scouts like, well, we're looking to see hopefully that you have a big game, and I was just responding like, I will, or something to that effect, and it just so happened like that was the game that I went off. My number was called, which a lot of the routes that I always hit on was a lot of routes that I normally quarterback normally looks the other way based off the read and coverages of the defense. But it was my time, and I just showed up and showed out, man. But I will say North Carolina, their secondary was really good. Linebackers, DBs, like those guys can hit. Like it was a couple times I came back to the huddle and like one of the receivers got hit. You see snot coming all down the person's nose. I'm like, ooh, but he gave it to you. So it was definitely a physical game. I wish I could have I wish I would have gave me 99 yards, but I won't complain.
You got 199.
Featured a holding penalty. That was a big conversion. And Owens now 8 catches for 179. They throw downfield again, and another catch by Owens. He's starting to really kill this Carolina defense. Owens inside the 40, 20 more yards.
The one thing that I've noticed here, that snap, with the time left on the clock, the urgency, it used to be, remember that end of the second quarter, Jesse, they were getting down to 2-1, delay a game. Now it's 15, 16 seconds.
They're hurrying up the tempo. You're absolutely right. And Christian Ponder, had it not been for a couple of drops, guys, he might almost be perfect.
I won't complain, man. That was definitely probably the most memorable and definitely favorite game I played.
Wasn't Lawrence Taylor in the house that night, I think?
I believe he was. And that was actually my favorite player coming up too.
LG, man.
I think I remember that. I think Bo Relfer called.
I don't know. I was thinking about Any Given Sunday with Lawrence Taylor.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. And then Jonathan just dropped the name of the illustrious Bo Relaford there from Fort Lauderdale's finest, right?
He had a nice TD in that game too.
Sure,
yes, he did, man.
Yeah. So, anyways, I want to get on. I know Jonathan, like I said, has got limited time. So before I do it, what do y'all make of like how you have so many voices like in media talking about like the same people talk about player safety and concussion and like acting like they care about that, or then flip around the same token and be like, we need to keep expanding and having more games. And it's like, it's just kind of crazy because like there was so much talk about like, concussion, CTE kind of stuff. And it seems like that is there, I guess the simple way to ask it is like, is there a way to like, quote, make football safe, or do people just need to understand that if you're playing football, you're taking an inherent risk? I mean, I'm just kind of, any thoughts you have just kind of in that direction?
I think, I kind of tend to agree with what you just said. I don't know, I think some of the rules personally, I think are a little bit ridiculous. I think they've gotten a little too eager to throw flags on helmet to helmet stuff. I do understand they're trying to deter that. I think the targeting thing and that stuff is good, but it's football. I mean, it's a tough, physical, violent game. If you look on your helmet, there's a warning about serious injury or death. And I know that at least when I grew up in football, they made us read that label every time. And that was really like a check to me. Even when I was like 12 years old, reading that warning label on the back of my Rydell football helmet's like, holy smokes, dude, like this is for real. Something could happen. It's just a risk. It's a risk, but I love the game. And I think people need to understand. And what I see a lot of, not all the time, but what I see a lot of is people talking about player safety who don't really know the game and who aren't that involved. Now, when there are player advocates, I think that's a good voice to listen to for player safety or maybe some changes. But, man, when it comes to just kind of the hypocrisy of corporate sports media, I mean, they're just trying to make money, so they're gonna talk out of both sides of their ass, like whatever's most convenient for the moment. Like they'll say whatever they need to get a buck.
Yeah, Jonathan, what's your talk on all that? Just the way the whole player safety stuff, is it like gone overboard? Is it like something is there a way to make it safe, or should people just recognize?
I mean, I agree with everything JR said. My biggest thing that I hate, just drives me crazy, watching the ejections. Like, I mean, it's so bad. Like, you can find a way to punish someone after the game based off the review, but just like the change, like to pull someone out of like a national championship game or like a big rivalry game over some like BS targeting, I hate that.
Well,
if it seems really malicious, then just suspend him for a quarter or half the next game. But just that moment in that game, in the NFL, I just find them like big money, but I just hate taking people out of the game. That's the worst part.
I mean, don't you think there should be some more discussion though, in terms of like if something's insanely egregious versus like if it was like, I don't know. Whenever you're measuring intent though, that gets kind of hard. You're asking some of these older referees that are, everything's going really fast to like decide whether someone intended to do something. That's also not the easiest thing to really.
Well, and I think too, the thing that they look at these Well, they kind of already do that with replay, right? They can say if this is a 15-yarder or if this is a 15-yarder with an ejection. So they're already kind of playing in that space, right? So it's like maybe just like let's say what we're all seeing and say, hey, pick the flag up. The running back lowered his head into the defender. Yeah, so maybe this is like I'm sitting there thinking like, hey, maybe this is a case where no harm, no foul. Hey, we're playing football. But I mean, dude, you can cause some damage, but let's be real. Like I agree with Johners, like throwing these guys out for things that are obviously unintentional. That's a little much for me. Like the Clemson kid the past 2 years, like I don't think it was that bad.
Wade from Ohio State, Jacksonville, Florida.
I didn't think that one was that bad.
I mean, 9 out of 10 or more, 95%, I think, are unintentional.
And it's also a matter of everything that bothers me. I mean, look, people of good faith can disagree on that. It's just, but I will say this: it's like the whole idea of like that way that's like this like public shaming to where you have to have like some like staffer.
I think they changed it.
It's like, let's watch this like bad criminal person. And like, let's just put our gaze on this. The object of our anger. To watch them walk off.
Put you in handcuffs and walk you back into the locker room. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not
but it does give the assistant strength coach of every team a little FaceTime, though.
You're right. Get back coach, right? Every get back coach, has a little moment in the sun right there. So yeah, it's that's definitely wild. I mean, anyways, yeah. No, so Jonathan, while you're here, real quick, maybe because I know I'll let you answer this, and then Ron, we'll wrap up here with JR and Ron.
7 at least, yeah.
Oh, all right, cool. Well, let's all right. So let's see here. Where do we want to transition to? I was talking about the player safety stuff.
I want to hear Rod's reaction to. I'm sure he's aware of it, but Jody Allen.
Oh yeah.
Man, that's
right. Yeah, Rod. So Jody Allen, or any other after Jody, any other assistants. They were quite a cast of characters, man. There at Florida State for a while. With the last few years of Coach Bowden. But yeah. What's Jonathan? Wanted to hear your reaction. Any good Jody Allen stories?
Oh man,
Jody, baby. What about the what was it? Jody Allen and Dexter, Coach Dexter got in a fight one time.
JR, we're talking about special teams coach. Yeah, there was a bad one with Coach Carter. Yeah.
No man. Yeah, that was actually fun. Like Jody Allen, man, he knew stuff. Like I have an appreciation for like just the approach and the planning that he put into like the special teams. Because when he started, man, like my freshman year, man, we blocked so many punts and field goals. And I was just in awe because if you watch football, you know how hard it is to block a punt or a field goal, and we were doing that every single game. Like that's unheard of. So yeah. I'm like Jody Allen, bro. He knew his stuff. But like during transition up here when we had the three head coaches, when Coach Carter and Jody Allen got into it. We had like a meeting like the next day, and he was talking and out of nowhere when his tooth fell out. And everybody's like, "Oh, everybody stop everything! Help me find my tooth!" So, oh man, that was like the funniest story. That was like the funniest time ever with Jody Allen, man.
Yeah, man. Jonathan, how about you, man?
What's up?
Okay, you?
Man, it's got to be in the meeting rooms with Kevin McNeil.
Yeah. So Kevin McNeil was a D end out of Camden County, Georgia.
And crazy boy.
And somehow, I don't know. I mean, he used to have beef kind of with Jody. Maybe you could explain a little bit.
I mean, well, I guess it's more of a Kevin McNeil story. But apparently, like he got suspended for a game, and his family flew up to Maryland to the game, and he didn't even tell us. He didn't want to tell his parents ahead of time that he was getting suspended. So
they flew up there. They just found out like in the stands watching the game. They're like, I mean, that'd be hilarious if they actually called him, or they're looking around and they're like, text him. He's just like, "Oh yeah, I'm in Tallahassee."
Yeah, but I mean, they just would always get into it and like just didn't really, just kind of a culture clash, and it's just kind of
Well, yeah, you had a lot of that though, because it was sort of like Jimbo Fisher brought in like his new guard of coaches, right? I think like you had James Coley in that mix, and it's kind of funny to say Rick Trickett in the new guard, but you know, it was the new group of coaches coming in. Then you had people that were sort of like the Chuck Amato Deus clique, and one thing I think, Jonathan, I don't know, you correct me if I'm wrong, but like one of the first things Jimbo did was like make it so that he broke up the whole dividing up of the locker room by position groups, right? And and that was the whole idea being that like he thought the team was too clicked up and not unified enough.
Yeah, I mean it's probably true.
Yeah,
it's probably true.
So, anyways, I wanted to how about if you could give any memories, recollections of that 2013 national championship season, real quick, that and just the way how that built up, and how things changed from like 2009 to 2013 to enable that turnaround.
Yeah, I mean, I feel a little weird. Definitely not on the level of stature or success of Rod or JR, but I did just observe it. I mean, it's just recruit. I mean, it's just elite recruiting all coming together with elite coaching. I mean, like it's just great. Like even in 2009 and even 2008, like we had the same guys that you won with, they had on those teams. Instead of 11 guys on defense that were all NFL guys across the board. Kelvin, LaMarcus Joyner. The difference is, it's like, you had those in 2009 with Nigel Bradham, Geno Hayes. Like you had NFL guys. It's just they unfortunately, just like in the 90s, it was like 10 or 11, but in the mid 2000s, it fell off to where it was like you only had maybe 3 or 4 guys that were capable. Then maybe half the offense was capable. I mean, it just hit where it was like the recruiting, they just killed it, and then it came together where you just had back like they had in the 90s with literally across the board NFL caliber guys, every single position, even back. I mean, look at running back room with Carlos Williams as a backup.
Right. Yeah.
That defense was just insane. I mean, but
Timmy. When you look down the list, I mean, Jalen Ramsey, Terrence Brooks, Christian Jones,
Terrence Brooks is like one of those like underappreciated guys that was just like really, really good. I mean, it's just just recruiting. It all came together with good coaching
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, Rod, I wanted to kind of ask you about the one. I mean, when you were there, it's sort of like when you were at Florida State, and it was sort of Florida happened to be sort of hitting their stride in a way that the thing goes in cycles. But I think y'all had your closest game with them. I think it was 2006 in Tallahassee, right? And it really seemed like that game could have turned the other way. I think it was 21-14.
Yeah. Well, yeah, man. I was just. I'm back at that game, and like the first thing I say is, I'm like, why didn't we throw at Greg Carr more often? Because like there were a lot of 50-50 balls that Drew Rutherford threw up, and he threw it to Cody Fags. Which Cody Fags is a good player, but you have a person on the other side that caught 10 touchdowns. So and he's way taller,
right?
And like his catching percentage was just looking at the game was much higher. So. I was just thinking like those 50-50 balls. I would have just took my chances with Greg Carr and put myself in a different situation, because the whole game, both offenses, neither of us was in rhythm. So it was just whoever made the big plays. In that case, Florida made more big plays than us. It wasn't any long drives. The way Gators beat us just off of blown coverage. Big plays by Percy Harvins, big plays by Dallas Baker. Man, so it was just whoever had the most big plays in that game, man, because both offenses wasn't in rhythm at all that game. So
no, absolutely. And then just to kind of switch it over to JR real quick, JR, maybe you could talk about some of the most memorable games at Wake in terms of, and also some of the opponents you played against, and maybe some things that people don't want to know about. I remember y'all beating up on SEC teams like Ole Miss pretty hard. I mean, it was beating Clemson.
We beat Coach Orgeron when he was head coach at Ole Miss. And that was speaking of rain, that had a 2.5 hour lightning delay. In Oxford. So we go into into Vaught Hemingway back into the locker room, and we're like cold, dude. We're like, are they canceling? We're thinking they're going to cancel it. No, we just get up and go back out there, and there might, because it was like hurricane type stuff. There might have been 25,000 people in the stadium that stuck around because it was still wet. Like, it was just still soaked in puddles. So that was an interesting one. And yeah, we beat up on them. The game wasn't as close as the score was. I think it was like 24-6, but it felt a lot, or something like that. It felt a lot worse. But yeah, I mean, I would have to say the speaking of, again, rainy game, the ACC championship versus Georgia Tech, just because the ACC championship, nothing terribly memorable about that game. Obviously, it was
except JR lighting up Calvin Johnson, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I think Calvin's doing okay. So, I had a nice game there, but there was a lot of really good memories. I think, I think we had a lot of good team chemistry. That 06 team was a real football team. We were better than the sum of its parts, right? Like, we were better than we had any reason to be. And I knew after that team left, I remember we went into spring that next year in 07. We were even a better team. And I knew from the first practice, I said, we're not nearly as good, because I could just tell it was a little too loose. Guys were having a little bit too much fun. The senior class wasn't as tight. Josh Gaddis was a great leader. Steve Vallos, who was an All-American, played for about 4 or 5 years in the NFL. Steve on the offensive line was a great leader. We had guys that had put in the work and had those 3 and 4 and 5 win seasons and kind of toughed it out and saw the fruits of their labor in 06. And then once they were gone, we had kind of some guys that were feeling themselves a little bit more than they probably should have. So 07 was a decent year. In 08, I thought we were really the most talented we had been, with Aaron Curry, Alfonso, that whole class. The defense was just loaded and stacked with talent. But I will say that was probably the most disappointing year, because I thought we were our most talented then and we underachieved. So it was kind of the steady decline. But there were a lot of great memories and a lot of great games.
Yeah.
So.
No doubt.
Yeah, you said that 07 team just had a bunch of gym rats and lunch pail guys.
You mean 06? Yeah. I mean, dude, I'll say, like, there were some intense cats like that love football. Like, there were guys that loved being there. And I think that is that's such a thing. Like, there's so much talent out there. I mean, once you get into some of these, you get in the NFL, or places like FSU that typically just got athletes and got some. I mean, it's everywhere. But the guys that really just freaking, whether it was raining or shining or whatever, they just wanted to go out and play football.
Yeah,
like we had those kind of guys on that team, and I think that was why we were successful, and just had a guys that loved doing it. So
yeah. And you also spoke to like how the line between winning and losing is so thin sometimes, and it's like it's really and you get to that.
Our senior year. So the last year we played, Rod and them beat up on us pretty good in my last home game at Wake on senior day. And we went to Death Valley, and Clemson beat up on us pretty good. They had CJ hit a few big runs early. And I mean, I was CJ Spiller. And I mean, they took like me and boo and like the defense out after halftime. Like they just said, because the offense was going 3 and out. We were just getting crushed. Offensive line was just getting demolished by their D line. And it was just a bad day. So they kind of waved the white flag. But we were 5-7 that year. And we lost so we lost bad to FSU, we lost bad to Clemson. The other 5 games we lost by a combined total of, I think, 11 points.
Wow.
And 2 of them were overtimes. I mean, it was just heartbreak after heartbreak. Georgia,
you lost to Miami, right? You lost to Baylor.
We lost to Miami. Converted a 4th and 19 to beat us on the last drive. We lost to Georgia Tech, who was number 8 in the country at the time, on the road in overtime. We lost to Boston College up in Chestnut Hill in overtime. Running back went the wrong way, and Riley got tackled from behind and fumbled the ball, or else he would have walked in and we would have won. And then we lost Navy in a torrential downpour by two points. I mean, it was a heartbreaking season, but it was. It's those are the breaks, man. It happens.
So real quick before we wrap, like I know Jonathan. I mean, anything else? I mean, I know you got to go, so we're going to wrap with just Rod. Tell us a little bit about your time with maybe a Tom Brady story or two from your time there in Foxborough with the Patriots. I know he told me one time about time he was what it was like. How he a lot of people always talk about how Brady is legendary for kind of jumping on his receivers, right?
Oh yeah, man. First off, when I first met Tom Brady, actually, I was walking past and he stopped me, and it was like whenever you see these movies and like you have a person that can just tell you everything about your whole life. That's exactly what he did to me, man. He was like, "Yeah, man, your brother's name Montreal." Now I'm just joking about that, but yeah, he told me everything about my football stats and just like where I went. And I was shocked, man. And then he was just. I always tell people, I'm like, man, Tom Brady, man, that boy got soul. Like he gets along with everybody, man. He's just a cool person, man. But when I got there overall, like you can feel like I don't know if you ever like you can feel the win atmosphere, like just how everybody goes about their business. And at this, I was like, damn, we didn't even need coaches because like if everything wasn't working, if everybody wasn't working hard, everybody wasn't executing, everybody wasn't giving 100%, man. Like he would go off the rails, and I'm like, damn, like this guy's crazy too. So like he got sold, but this man's crazy. Man, I'm like he's spiking the ball, man. He's like, man, you need to get your shit together. I'm like, damn, like, and I was like, that's when I was, and I kind of understood like what it took to win, man, because he put so much into it. When we used to go to the meets, even the special teams, like he's like. Special team coaches to ask questions, and people were able to answer similar to how Tom Brady read my personnel. Like it was like this is a left-footed kicker, and he went to so college. He likes to kick the ball on to the left side, and they talked about the punt coverage. Like these guys are like so detailed in like just their approach to the game.
Yeah, and
I didn't it was on another level. Like I understood people like were studying, but just collectively overall how they just approach the game, it was just like a new respect. And like I have a respect for like the Patriots and their organization and just how they run it, man. Because I'm like, this is what it feels like to be a champion, and this is what you need to do to be a champion.
Hey, Rob. Before we get to JR's Aaron Rodgers stories. What was it like on like selecting the pass? Is it when you get the undrafted free agency? Isn't it like it turns into like a little bit of recruiting, right? I mean, did you have other options and like were they trying? I mean, what was the selection process on?
Yeah, so I actually I went to the Rams first, and then I went to the Patriots. So yeah, man, it was kind of crazy for me because I was still I was out on injury, so I was still kind of hurt up, and like. When I looked at the film, because you have like the rookie mini camp and then you have the actual mini camp, gimping around, but had like a groin injury. Like at the end of our last bowl game, bro. Like I took like a cortisone shot. Like I couldn't even walk after the game. So instead of like training, like I took the whole time like just healing, so I be able to run for the day, man. So When I got to minicamp, like it took me a long time to get warm for my body, like my groin area to be loose and actually be able to run. And like I could see it on camera. So I went home and I came back all night. They run like fast, like lightning fast. So then they let me go at the Rams, and then and a couple weeks later, then the Patriots called me, and then I went play with the Patriots. Then that's what they were actually going to bring me back for the squad. And I ended up tearing my freaking while training. So that was my break.
That was the year, like what Gronk and Aaron Hernandez were rookies too, right? They drafted both of them.
Yeah, man. Yep. That class is just ridiculous. Man, Aaron Hernandez, man, he was unreal because we played against my Florida State, and I think he shot like 7 people and scored.
Yeah.
I was like, dang, I said that boy's special, man.
2009 game. I just remember being there. What was that? That was the game when I remember Tavares Presley and his mom was like right behind the bench yelling at Jimbo, like, you know, put TP in, Jimbo. That's why they beating your ass. He turned around and gave a look like the look of death, you know.
The classic Hernandez punting the ball in the stands.
I love it. That's the best part of that game.
I'm like, damn.
Just like, I'm punting that in the stands.
Bro, it was just going and doing all kinds of stuff, man. I was like, damn.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of those games you hate to ever say it, but like you knew kind of like just walking on the field that like, sorry, Florida State wasn't winning that day.
Man, they got the ball to 86, but I ain't said nothing. But I won't say that's a system. Nah, that's when that Joe Hagan was. I think Joe Hagan was covering me on that side, but
I mean, they didn't throw the 86 enough. That's the reason, right?
Yeah,
I truly believe.
Rod, did you interact with Hernandez at all? Like, did you just being Florida State?
Just briefly. I actually sat with him in the hallway while I observed him eat a chocolate chip cookie, but that's about it. Waiting for a meeting.
Eating a chocolate chip. You could write a poem about that one day, you know.
I guess those were a few of his favorite things.
Aaron's cookie. Yeah. I mean, what do y'all make? I mean, is there you hear a lot about like the you know kind of analysis that some of Aaron Hernandez's like decisions were because he had like CTE or anything. I mean, I tend to think like without much evidence. I mean, we don't really know, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's definitely like, you know, certain people that, you know, have had it affects decision making, but I think it's kind of hard to like, you know, think that any kind of head injury stuff was the sole reason this guy turned into the psycho he was. But I mean, I know in Gainesville there's like murders that happened there still, like pretty much people know on the street that like Hernandez was you know, responsible for, but nobody wanted to come forward. But anyways,
yeah. Wrap up with JR.
Yeah. So the Marshawn Lynch story or two, and then we'll call it a night.
Oh man, so
what do you want to say, honestly? But
oh man, so Marshawn Lynch, dude, that cat was hilarious, bro. Like, he was one of my favorites. Just the short time I was around him, because like I said, he got traded probably a month and a half after I got to Buffalo. But we're just running, you know, we're just in practice and stuff. And I had learned kind of some new hand games from a guy that I'd worked with called Joe. His name's Joe Kim. He's kind of a D-line guru, you know, D-lineman. We got all these things. And so I was playing outside linebacker at the time, but, you know, we all used our hands and same difference. So I go up to Marshawn and, like, do this high-low move and, like, grab his elbow, pull him through because he's pass blocking me on a, you know, just a drop back pass play. And I just kind of get by him just real quick and throw him out of the way. And he comes up to me after the play and just like eyes wide, like, bro, dude, show me that shit again, dog. Like, he thought it was the best thing he'd ever seen. Like, he was just like, what is that? Like,
that's how he was just like, what is that?
He was like, damn, cuz. Like, he was just so like impressed that like which is cool. It was like a compliment, but he was just like, it was just so funny. His reaction was just like a little kid just being like, that's the coolest thing I ever seen. I'm like, dude, you're Marshawn Lynch. You like run over people for, because it's a Tuesday and don't think anything about it.
Just jacked the golf cart and just went cruising around all over the field doing wheelies,
Yeah, I mean, you could tell, like, you could just kind of catch the vibe. He was on his way out, like, mentally, because there was all of the trade rumors already going on. So he was kind of whatever, but nice guy, really good dude. I think the funniest one was, I went on my recruiting visits. I went up to Louisville for my recruiting visit, and at the time, my host was a first year center by the name of Eric Wood.
Yeah.
Eric ended up being a hell of a player at Louisville. Went first round, drafted by Buffalo. He was the second first round draft pick in the 2009 draft. Ended up going to a few Pro Bowls. He's now on the ACC network, does a lot of the football games and sideline stuff. But he was my host at Louisville, and then we played against him in the Orange Bowl, and then I get to Buffalo, and we're working together there too. So it's just kind of like funny how all that stuff lines up. But once you get into college football and you're playing at a high level, it's kind of funny, the connections. It gets to be kind of a small world, right? There's a lot of teams and there's a lot of players, but those who know, people knew.
Someone that knows somebody else that you also know. Like, it's just
you're all so connected. Like, so when we got to Buffalo, my locker was right next to CJ Spiller. Well, we're both from the North Florida area and played against each other at Clemson and Wake, and we had plenty to talk about and just hung out and just knowing all these people because there's a little bit of familiarity. And then there was a guy that I played against who was at Georgia Tech, or another guy. I became really close with David Nelson from Florida. So it's just like you just start these relationships, and I think that was the best thing, man. That's honestly that's the thing. I miss playing, but just as much as I miss playing, I miss the locker room.
Yeah, speak to that real quick until you brought that up. Like, I mean, the locker room and how much is there anything else you miss more than? And you hear about that a lot. The cats that done with football, like the inability to recreate that experience, like whether it's the thrill of the arena, all the different things, but really like that brotherhood that goes on in the locker room.
We'll never get the locker room back. Like nobody here sitting here, and like there's nothing like it. And I think that it was probably the most free venue I'd been in a long time. I mean, we had guys debating, I'm sure Rod, Johners, you guys, I mean, Nate, you know too, like guys debating top five point guards all time. Like, and it would get heated. And then, then there would be a guy that like would pull a prank and leave some, something dirty in somebody's locker room. And then there would be jokes being had, and then there would be things plastered on the wall. It was just like, it was a little bit of anarchy, but everybody got along because there was this mutual camaraderie and respect to each other because we all had a job to do together. So I don't think like outside of like the military, you really get that kind of band of brothers feel anywhere else. And I mean, football is the ultimate team game. So even a sport like basketball, that's got a little bit more of an individual vibe because of the numbers are down, right? So I mean, football, you'd have 100 guys in the locker room from all walks of life trying to figure it out. Like, how are we gonna take on FSU this week? Man, they got a great player in Rod Owens. Like, how are we gonna cover him? How are we gonna approach CJ Spiller, keeping him contained like that? And you had this common goal, but at the same time, you were able to be 20, 21-year-old kids, right? Out from under your own roof, like living life, acting a fool. I mean, let's be honest, like some of it is not made for TV, but it was some of the most fun I've ever had.
Yeah, I mean, I remember having Oklahoma drills in the locker room, and I got to Florida State. People just, I mean, talk about unsafe. I mean,
Yeah.
other safety conditions. I mean, it's like getting a lawsuit. Somebody like had a serious injury, like a unorganized Oklahoma drill. But I don't know, Jonathan. What is?
I don't know if Rod's still there or not. I think
he's throwing in and out.
I think it was like Richard Goodman and Nigel Bradham. I had it on an old phone, but probably lost it. I mean, full pads, like on the ground, get up, Oklahoma, in the middle of the locker room.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Richard Goodman was a baller in his own right. Played for the Chargers a little bit too.
Yeah.
I know. I forgot JR. I mean, what about you were at the Packers for a while? I mean, Clay Matthews, AJ Hawk. He's all on all the time.
AJ Hawk's everywhere, man. He's doing his thing with Pat McAfee. No, yeah. I mean, my time there was pretty brief. I was there for a few months. It was because I was moving from a 3-tech, from an interior defensive line to playing outside linebacker. Yeah. So my body was not in the position at that time to play that because I still didn't know where I was going to fit because I was so much of a tweener. So I show up at 280, 275, and I'm not Sean Merriman and I can't carry that kind of weight and be effective. So I did some good things, some all right things at the time, but I just didn't know enough, and just wrapping my head around the concepts of coverage was just a lot to throw on my plate at the time. So I came into camp, and then I went to camped with Kansas City, but Aaron Rodgers was at the time was a good to me and all the rookies. I remember a few times he asked me, he said, "Hey, do you need a ride?" Because he knew we were going back to the hotel. We were going back. Every single rookie, even Brian Bulaga, the first round pick, he had to spend some time at the hotel, even though we knew he was going to buy a house and have a spot there in Green Bay. He was really nice. Clay was a great player. That I remember, it was the oddest thing though. I remember going to that camp and getting a few practices in, and I just automatically knew. I said, this team is going to win the Super Bowl.
And they did.
And they did. That year they won. I said, I just knew it. I'm like, this team's going to win the Super Bowl. I was I don't know. It was just some kind of intuition. I'm like, this is the first NFL team I've been on, but I don't really have anything else to compare it to. But I just knew football, and I knew what my eyes were telling me. You know what I mean?
John Russell, also known as Miss Cleo.
Yeah, I mean, I just knew that and everything. But I mean, Green Bay is a hell of an organization, and I spent some time at Kansas City, and they are too. I mean, at the time, Buffalo, who I spent the whole season with, was not what it is now. We were kind of hanging out in the doldrums, so to speak. A 4-win, 5-win team.
Trent Edwards?
Trent Edwards was there for 2 weeks, and then he got traded. Yeah. So because Fitzy was our guy,
Okay. Yeah,
Ryan Fitzpatrick, yeah, man.
He's played for about half the NFL now.
Dude, he's the guy. So you need a quarterback, you just plug and play, right?
I feel like Gardner Minshew is going to be the next Fitzpatrick. Just kind
of he could be. I like some of the things your boy Colin Cowherd made this point, which I think is kind of a valid point. He compared him statistically to Baker Mayfield, and they are apples to apples.
Well, we know how he feels about Baker Mayfield,
right? And
it was legit. It was legit.
But it was just a thing. But I'm interested to see how Urban Meyer does this year.
Dude, basically, Trevor Lawrence is God and is the greatest thing of all time. And I mean,
he's great, but he's gonna struggle because they just don't. I mean,
their O-line is bad, but
their O-line is not going to hold up. If that preseason game was, and then look, I think they'll get better. If that thing's any indication, I mean, he got sacked. The second sack was really bad because someone said he held onto the ball. I was like, dude, it was a max protect 2 wide receiver route. He had 1, there was no one to throw to, and 2, they couldn't even protect in max protection. I'm like, They protect him at all costs because he's great, but it could be I mean, they're going to be better, but I think they're going to be like a 4-win team this year, maybe.
Oh, I see Jonathan sitting there shaking his head.
I'm cheering for them. I hope they win 9-10 games, but I just don't see it.
I think the defense is the bigger. I mean, will be the
bigger
dude.
Concern. Yeah, actually,
I mean, they're trying to do the 2017 just kind of free agent route and hope it all gels together. So it's a lot of new people in there on defense. But
absolutely. So
I get
time. Jonathan's got dad duties, and I appreciate the time, JR, little bro.
JR,